With thousands of years of rich cultural history, world-changing innovations, and dynasties lasting centuries, China has continued to be a world powerhouse that is one of the biggest contributors to the world economy. The rapid industrialization of the country in the last 70 years has been unprecedented, as it completely evolved from an agrarian society to an industrial one. How did this change occur? It was a result of the Great Leap Forward, a movement led by Chinese dictator Mao Zedong in the 1950s. Causing the Great Famine in the process that killed upwards of 36 million people, Zedong put up immense propaganda, calling farmers to join him in bringing China into a new age of industrialization and technological advancement. Putting farmers out of work, China struggled for many years to adjust and find a balance between industry and agriculture. In the 80s and 90s, China found this balance, and a growing population reaching 1 billion people meant the demand for energy was extremely high. Industrial activity increased as a result. China is a leader in the world economy and makes many of the items people need and desire. 14.84% of the world's GDP comes from China, which is the second largest behind the United States. The range of Chinese goods includes iron, steel, aluminum, textiles, cement, chemicals, toys, electronics, rail cars, ships, and aircraft. As of 2015, manufacturing is the largest and most diverse sector in the country. China is a leader in the production of air conditioners, solar cells, shoes, cell phones, and ships. As such, changing industry to support the environment would be devastating to the world. The auto industry is also massive in China, as it is the third largest in the world. Technology has become a world necessity, and since China produces over 45 times more personal computers than the rest of the world, it has a responsibility and a right to supply the demand. Supplying this demand comes with a heavy price, however. Though China has a right to supply the items and the energy demanded by its people, it also has a responsibility to the environment and the global community to curb pollution in order to avoid causing irreversible damage to the ecosystem and putting the health of its people in serious jeopardy. The pollution in China is some of the worst in the world and is contributing significantly to global warming. The rapid increase in CO2 emissions happened in the course of 70 years, making it one of the largest polluters in the shortest time span, as is shown by the graph. This trend is catastrophic if not curbed soon. The dangers to its people have become apparent, as it is considered responsible for many illnesses such as stroke, lung cancer, ischemic heart disease, acute lower respiratory disease, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Asthma in Chinese cities is the leading cause of hospitalization in children. Across China, breathing the air is equivalent to smoking 2.4 cigarettes per day. This is the national average. Beijing is shown on the left during a smoggy day, and on the right during a windy day, when the air has moved. The difference is shocking. A map of China highlighting polluted areas shows how poor the air quality is. Water pollution is also a major issue. Pollution of the Huai River, a major source of water for many residents in northern China, is unacceptably bad. This is only a part of a national water crisis, where contamination of groundwater and water shortages in the major cities like Beijing cause many Chinese residents to have to drink the water despite its harmful effects on the body. Borrowing an idea from the regime of Mao Zedong, the Chinese government has invested billions in creating canals to transport water from southern China to the northern part, where many of the largest cities are located. This is not a sustainable solution, however, as the south needs water as well. Chinese cities are ill-equipped to handle flooding because of the amount of runoff created due to lack of absorption, and as such, they are unable to use rainwater to their advantage to combat water shortages. One method Chinese cities have proposed to combat this problem is by making streets out of porous materials that allow water to flow back into the ground to be used again, rather than drained away into oceans. A porous city would be a highly efficient and cost-effective solution. However, the water is still unusable. Statistics released by the government of China show that more than half of all the groundwater in northern China is undrinkable. There have been many accounts of many residents drinking polluted water and then contracting cancer. The Chinese State Department has put an act in place called the Water 10 that serves to create water pollution guidelines for specific polluting industries in 2020 and 2030. This has proved to be a pivotal act as more than 50,000 polluting businesses were forced to shut down or halt operations as a result of the monetary penalties for not meeting pollution standards. If enforced properly, the Water 10 could change the outlook of China's water for the better and force businesses to adapt to cleaner methods of production and waste management in order to maintain profitability. Buildup of trash and inadequate disposal of technological waste are also significant issues plaguing the country. Fortunately, the Chinese government has banned the importation of 56 different kinds of trash that is recycled by China. This is a major blow to the recycling industry as the West relies on China for recycling, but it will be beneficial for China to be able to make progress in taking care of the already enormous amount of waste in the country. The unprecedented pollution that China is suffering from is a consequence of the country being an industrialized economic powerhouse. Considering the health effects of pollution on China's own people and the environmental impact China has, they have a responsibility to keep the environment safe and their people safe. China has recently become invested in solving this problem and keeping the environment and the people safe while continuing to produce for the world. In 2015, China took part in the largest climate change agreement in history, the Paris Accords. 195 members of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change have taken part in signing the Paris Climate Agreement and therefore entering into a non-binding commitment to reduce carbon emissions and prevent insurmountable climate change. China now has a role as the most advanced country currently in the agreement to reduce the biggest carbon footprint in the world and make the world a safer place to live in. According to the Chinese Prime Minister Li Keqiang, China will declare war on pollution. The ways in which they wage war are by cutting back on polluting industry and increasing investment in clean energy, creating over 12 million jobs and investing $360 billion in the clean energy sector. China has put a plan in place to change their ways and improve the state of the environment by reducing pollution while providing jobs to millions. Enforcing regulations on polluting businesses has proved difficult, as inspectors in northern China have reported that nearly 70% of the 14,000 businesses they examined were non-compliant with pollution regulations. Economic pressure to continue supply and demand for products and energy has put China in a difficult spot where curbing pollution comes at the price of severely hampering their booming economy. The coal-powered sector is dominant in China and produces the most carbon pollution of any industry, along with oil and natural gas. However, putting a plan in place sets the stage for a gradual shift away from coal power and eventually having a power grid that relies on clean energy such as wind and solar power. China has been the leader in clean energy investment for years and produces significantly more clean power than the United States, with over twice the wind power capacity. There are still significant improvements that need to be made. However, China has finally realized their responsibility to their people and the environment to keep it clean and safe for living, while producing the goods and services that the world needs to continue to evolve and advance. China is a perfect example of a country who exploited a right to free industry and growth, but is now facing the repercussions and must adapt in order to prevent catastrophic climate change and lethal pollution.